what do I do with these 2 to 3 lines? How can I make it so interesting that it'll get me the job? If that's where your mind goes, you're already in danger. Okay, hi guys. Just want to take a quick second to talk about 1 to 2 line auditions, right? You get those auditions where you get all excited and you look at the dialogue and it's 3 lines, 2 lines, and that's it. And suddenly there's this tremendous amount of pressure. Recently I was on set coaching an actor of mine who just booked a new series. And in between setups, I was chatting with the director, and it was my first day on set working on this particular show with my client. And so the director was asking me about my business and my studio and all of that. And he says, "Hey, can I pick your brain for a second?" I said, "Yeah, sure." He said, how do you help actors, how do you direct them with 1 or 2 lines? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, "Well, obviously I know how to direct them, but I want to get from an acting coach's perspective, how do you help them to not make it everything? Because as a director, that's one of the most frustrating things that I've come across is the line is just, 'Dr. Johnson, we need you up on 2.' And that's it. We're just looking for somebody to come in to that moment, be believable as the nurse who's saying, 'Dr. Johnson, we need you up on 2.' And he was saying that when he gets on set, it happens all the time. That the actor is making way too much out of the moment. 'Dr. Johnson, we need you up on 2. Dr. Johnson, we need you up on 2. Dr. Johnson, we need you up on 2. Instead of, 'Dr. Johnson, we need you up on 2.
Unseen.
So I told him, I said, well, you got to understand from an actor's perspective, that's their moment. And that's all you're going to see of them. And so naturally there's going to be a tendency to want to make a big moment out of their moment because that's really all there is to the moment. And he said, exactly. And it's so frustrating. All we need is the person to just come in and say, 'Dr. Johnson, we need you up on 2. And then get out of there and be done with it. How do you help the actor understand that that's all that it is? And if they can just say the line believably and have us completely convinced that this is a person who says these kind of things all the time. 'Dr. Johnson, you're needed up on 2. Dr. Kerouac, you're needed up on 3. Whatever the line is. It just has to be believable. It's not filled with a lot of drama. It's just that Dr. Johnson is needed up on 2. This is a director who has been directing episodic for over 20 years. So he wasn't asking me because he needed to know himself how to handle actors. Obviously, he's been doing it and dealing with it. It was simply a reflection of how frustrating it is for him as a director that it happens all the time. So he wanted my take on it. So I gave him my take on it. And then I thought, you know what, this would be a really, really good video topic. So I'm going to let you know what I told him. How to not make a mountain out of a molehill of a couple of lines of dialogue. So that you can book the job, do the work, stick it on your resume, and move on to the next gig. Because really, no one's going to win an Academy Award from a couple of lines of dialogue. Look, Harrison Ford started off with just a couple of lines. We all know, paging Mr. Ellis, paging Mr. Ellis.
Paging Mr. Ellis.
Something like that's not going to win you an Oscar. Something like that's not going to win you an Emmy. So why try to make it this huge Shakespearean moment? Okay, number 1. Understand the context in which the 2 to 3 lines of dialogue exist. There's a larger story at hand. There's a larger moment. Guaranteed, if your audition consisted of 2 or 3 pages of dialogue, and those 2 to 3 lines fell somewhere in the middle of those 2 to 3 pages of dialogue that your character has, those 2 to 3 lines would lose all their power. Those 2 to 3 lines would be second nature. Those 2 to 3 lines would suddenly not have the spotlight shining brightly on them, and so all the pressure would be off to make those 2 to 3 lines interesting. They would just fall naturally within the rest of the dialogue. The problem is, when you have 2 to 3 lines, and that's all that there is, the other dialogue doesn't exist. So suddenly, that dialogue is massive in our minds. So here's an exercise for you. The next time you get one of those auditions, come up with at least 5 to 10 lines of dialogue that exist on this side of those 2 to 3 lines, and come up with 5 to 10 lines of dialogue that exist on this side of those 2 to 3 lines of dialogue. This way, those 2 to 3 lines of dialogue are sitting in the middle of a much larger speech. Then when your character arrives at those 2 to 3 lines, they're easier to say. I do this with my actors all the time, because sometimes, yes, they want to come in and coach 2 to 3 lines of dialogue. So we'll improv all kinds of life that happened beforehand, all kinds of life that could potentially happen afterwards. And suddenly those 2 to 3 lines become second nature, so much easier to say. The second thing you can do is to remind yourself that whatever dialogue your character is speaking, this is that character's daily life. It's that character's daily world that they live in. So to them, the lines aren't that interesting. They're coming from a place, a point of view, and it just serves the story. If you are that character who is saying, Dr. Johnson, you're needed up on 2, that's really all it is. Honestly, you guys, I will have actors come to me, and by the end of the coaching session, they're saying, it feels really boring now. Like, am I doing enough? And then they end up booking the job, call me afterwards all excited. Well, I guess it was enough. It felt like it was the most boring thing I've ever done, but I guess it worked. And I say, yeah, because you weren't acting. You weren't trying to make something more interesting than it needed to be. You simply served the story, did your job. You got Mr. Johnson to go up on 2, and you didn't steal focus. Job well done.
Really well done.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents on 2 to 3 line auditions. I hope it helps to take the pressure off and just to know that you have a job to do. Go in there, do it. You're not going to win any awards for it, but you'll make a nice paycheck and you'll have a nice credit to stick on your resume, and it could lead to something else. No mountains! We don't need to make a meal out of it. The meal is the story. The meal is not you in the story. You're just part of the story. Take care. I'll catch you next time.